Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories Podcast. Maybe today I should say rise and shout. The Cougars are out. I'm Dr. John DeLynn. It is August 23rd, 2019. And we have a very special multi-part series that we're going to be covering today. Today is BYU Cougar Day. Does BYU Idaho have a mascot? Are they Cougars too? I don't even know. What's that?
I would assume so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it is back to school week in the United States, and lots of the children of Mormon and post-Mormon adults are going to be attending BYU, whether BYU Idaho or BYU Provo or BYU Hawaii. And so we are really excited to be bringing to you today a series on how to survive the BYUs or BYU Provo, BYU Idaho, BYU Hawaii as either an unorthodox Mormon student or as a non-believing student. Margie and I went to BYU. My faith crisis really started and heated up there. So this is a topic near and dear to my heart. But every single year we have students reach out to us either privately or on Facebook or on Reddit. And they share that they've lost their faith at BYU. And what do they do? Because their academic career can be in jeopardy. Their standing at BYU can be jeopardized. They can be turned into the honor code office. But more importantly, how do they find friends? How do they find community? How do they find support? How do they deal psychologically with sort of the difficulties and the perils and the dangers and the traumas of losing your faith at BYU or just being unconventional at BYU? We know that, worst case scenario, you can lose 1 to 2 years of your academic work and a lot of money and a lot of time, not to mention the psychological harm that can come about when you're trying to navigate a very conservative religious and academic environment and a sincere faith crisis. And so we're going to be talking about it today. And our goal is to, number one, provide support for students who are there to help them make it through unscathed or minimally scathed. But also, we know that Church Headquarters pays attention to Mormon Stories Podcast. We know that our efforts combined with others helps the church change its policies. And there's this amazing BYU survival guide that's been written and is being maintained by the people that will be, or at least some of the people that we'll be interviewing today. And so we'll be promoting the BYU survival guide as well as part of all of this. And so we have 3 individual interviews that we're going to do, each to kind of profile a different student or in this first case, a couple. And then we'll be bringing together a panel of all of them to do a final sort of breakdown and discussion. We are live streaming all of this, hopefully, if technology allows. And so we are welcoming comments and questions and stories if people want to share that we can add to the discussion. So that's what's about for today. If you're listening now to the live stream and you have family or friends who are past, current, or future BYU students, please share this with them so they can watch it and share it on your walls, however you want to share it to get the word out. And we'd love to have as many participants as we can. That'd be great. So without any further ado, our first discussion today is going to be a fun one. We are interviewing Bradley and Alana Butters. And hi, guys. Welcome to Mormon Stories Podcast.
Hello.
Alana, I see you've got your BYU t-shirt there.
Yes, this is a nonverbal cue that we like BYU, and this is not a hate podcast.
It's not. It's a love podcast.
So this is for students. This is for the university. This is for that. So
yeah, and I loved my time at BYU.
Yeah.
So did Margie. There were hard things, but there were amazing things. So this won't be a trash fest.
No,
this is gonna be a love fest.
Yes.
But also a deep dive into how we can help people.
Yes.
All right. So let's begin with your guys' story. and then, we'll kind of do the background stuff, and then we'll get to the BYU experience. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay. Take it away, Alana.
Okay, so
What's your maiden name? If you want to
Peters.
share. Okay.
Yep,
All
Peters.
right.
Yeah. So, I'm the oldest of 6 kids. Great family. I was raised and just did all of the LDS things and loved it. Absolutely still do really, really love the LDS faith, the church, all those things. I was baptized at 8. We were really good about doing family home evening every Monday. I loved family home evening.
Where were you? What geographic?
So I was born in Provo.
Okay.
My parents were in Wymount.
Really?
Yes.
Probably or maybe 10 years after me. Do you know what years they were there?
They were 90 to 95-ish.
Okay, so we overlapped.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep.
I ended in 93, so
Okay. Yep.
Yep.
that's awesome.
So, we had my roots there.
Her dad taught at the MTC for a while.
Yep. And
You guys are making me feel old, by the way.
yep. Yep. And he moved around for his job. We moved to Texas and then back to Logan, Utah, and then Amarillo, Texas. But I mostly was raised when I was 10, we moved to Washington State, which is actually where Bradley's family lived. That's where we met, was in Washington.
In 5th grade.
In 5th grade. So that's where I claim being raised, was Washington. But yeah.
Yeah. And then I was born in Salt Lake. My dad was going to the University of Utah.
What?
Yeah, we've got a really fun rivalry that goes with football and everything. All of my siblings ended up going to BYU, so we outnumber them. So I'm the oldest of 5 siblings. I've got all sisters. I'm the oldest, and I was baptized at 8. Family's super active in the church. We did scripture study, family home evening. We're always on time to church, sat towards the front, just a really
solid.
Yeah, a really solid core family in our ward in Washington. So we moved there when I was like 5. It's a pretty small town, which was a lot of fun. There's like 5,000 people in town. And growing up, there was just one ward. So we were in the same ward for most of our youth activities. And then the ward split later on when we were in high school, and we ended up in different wards. So all my life I was preparing for a mission, saying, I hope they call me on a mission in primary. Both my parents' families were members, have some inactive family, but it was really, really great, and made me who I am today. So I'm really grateful for that, and to my parents for that. We really enjoyed the small town community.
We had a really tight youth group too.
Yeah.
So, everyone in our age level, got personal progress, Eagle Scout, duty to God, mutual all the time, seminary, and we were really, really, really close. I remember once there was a snow day, and it was a 2-hour delay from school, and I thought, we have 2 hours in the morning, and we were in high school, and instead of thinking let's sleep in and drink hot chocolate like our friends, I was like, it would be so fun if we all went to the church and watched the Testaments. And I remember calling everyone, and our whole seminary class showed up.
Yeah.
And we were always doing stuff like that. We'd watch church movies on Sunday evenings together. We'd go to all the dances. We really made an effort to try and invite everyone to the dances. And I remember singing We Are the Army of Helaman, that song, and crying in high school, because I just felt like everyone in our group was so solid, and we were so blessed by the gospel. We were so happy.
Yeah, there's a lot of good camaraderie. I had a lot of really good friends in the grade older than me, and in my grade, and we were kind of the golden generation of our ward. I felt like there was, good grief, an 8-year period, I think, before us, at least maybe 10 years, where there was maybe one missionary that left the ward, and a lot of the older kids went inactive after leaving high school. And then we came through, and we were just like totally solid.
Yeah, like the year we graduated, there was like 13 people on missions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of the ward members kind of appreciated that, and we kind of changed the feel of mutual and of the ward, because it, instead of being something that you did begrudgingly, like we really enjoyed it, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we volunteered. Yeah, I remember going and like putting pass along cards in people's high school lockers, like during lunch, and that was a fun thing that lots of people did. And yeah, we had a really good time.
We always
In high school.
Yeah, in high
Yeah.
school. Yep.
And then we'd see, you know, the high school quarterback has like a picture of Jesus on his binder, and I was like, put that in your locker.
Yep. We ate together at lunch, so everyone knew us as the Mormons. There's not a lot of members in our town in Washington, so that was kind of our identity growing up and who we were. I wasn't super enthusiastic about like putting pass along cards in people's lockers and being like super missionary at school, but I wasn't like afraid of it, and like was willing to talk about it. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Any experiences kind of as Mormon teens or youth that kind of feed into what ended up happening at BYU, just in terms of seminary or bishops' talks or family dynamics or any of that?
So my dad was called as a counselor in the bishopric before the ward split. And then the ward split when we were freshmen in high school, I think, or in 8th grade. And then he was called as bishop after the ward split. And so that was a big change for our family. And that it just kind of really changed the spirit in our family, and
In a
how
good way, or?
yeah, in a positive way. Like we felt like we had to step up. You know, Dad was at church all day on Sunday and in the evenings, and it was just this family sacrifice that we did. And you know, Mom had to get us ready for church by herself because he was there early, and it was this, I don't know, it was just kind of this big thing for our family. Like, we're doing this, and it's yeah, it's big. It was yeah, it was great. Yeah.
Did you have something else you were going to say?
Nope.
I can talk about how I got a pretty strong testimony.
Yeah, sure. That'd be great.
Yeah, so
You guys in seminary together, right?
Yeah.
yeah, we did
early morning seminary. Yeah.
Early morning, yep. Yep.
I was seminary president. So
So when I was 10, 11, what was the year that President Hinckley asked all the families to read the Book of Mormon by the end of the year? And it was the first time a challenge like that had been given. And like
I
everyone
remember
was
that.
doing
I was
it.
in Logan. I remember I was in Logan at the time.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
sometime between 2004 and, I don't know, 2015.
Yeah. Anyway, so we did it as a family, and I was like 10 at the time. And I had, you know, like 4 younger siblings reading the Book of Mormon. And when we were done, my dad really took the time to talk about how, you know,
Cody says it was 2005.
2005. Okay.
Thanks, Cody.
Yep. How like there's the promise and Moroni's promise, and you know, if you read these things, I would exhort you that you should ask God, the eternal Father, in the name of Christ, you know, if these things are true. And then if you ask with a sincere heart, real intent, having faith in Christ, he'll manifest the truth of it unto you. So my dad said, you should do that. You know, we just finished. You should go pray and see what happens. And so I did. I just remember the spot. It was like behind my bedroom door, and I like opened the door and then like hid in the slot and knelt down and prayed. And I just remember like it was like warm and tingly all over, and I just like knew the Book of Mormon was true. And I tried reading after that. I read it again by myself on like the top bunk, I remember, and then I did it again 2 years later, and the same thing happened. It was like so powerful. I knew the Book of Mormon was true. And then we read it again in seminary. I read it again a couple times in high school, and I just kept doing it every time because I thought, you know, every time I can get the same answer. And it happened every time. And I really knew it was true. And then I think a big thing for me too was like, by their fruits ye shall know them. And like the fruits of my life were so good. Like
I had a really beautiful family. Like, I was so happy, like, all the time. And high school, just looking at my friends, I just felt so much happier than they were. And I was like, I want to share this with them. And so a lot of it was like a really practical outlook too, like, look at what it's done for my life. This is something that's so valuable for me. And I would just love for everyone to be happy like this. And so, yeah, that was big for me.
And that's a lot of what attracted me to her, was seeing that positive outlook and seeing how she was just so happy and loved the gospel and was preparing to be a great wife and mom. And that was a lot of the focus with Young Women's, and yeah, and I felt a lot of the same way. I didn't have a lot of spiritual experiences growing up. That was just kind of the nature of my faith and how I felt the Spirit. It wasn't a constant thing. It wasn't like I read the Book of Mormon and prayed about it and like I felt, Moroni's promise. But there were a few very powerful moments growing up. My baptism, I felt great. There was, doing home teaching with my dad. There was a couple times that, we would be in the car, like on the way to help like some widow or some family that was struggling with activity. My dad and I kind of my dad, he was really giving and selfless and hardworking in the ward, which is why he ended up being called as bishop, I'm sure. And so we had a lot of really hard families to home teach, some inactive members that, hadn't opened the door for a while, families that were going through divorce and infidelity and widows and things like that. And so there's a few of those like really special, powerful experiences that I felt like really served me later on to prepare me for a mission and like really strengthen my testimony. There's a few times in like Sunday school as a young teenager, we watched what's the movie? It's not 17 Miracles. It's another Pioneer one where they're going across the plains and dying. It's really hard and they have faith. And I remember like, that was one of the first times I really felt the Spirit really strong and I was crying. And so
Legacy?
That's what I was
was
wondering.
it Legacy?
It was like was it in the visitor center?
I don't remember. It was a little bit older, maybe like a 90s film.
Yeah.
But,
Okay.
and I was crying and it was embarrassing. And it was the first time like I'd felt like that as powerfully. And so I left and went to the bathroom and my mom was out in the hall and saw me crying and we went outside and she just gave me this big hug and said, that's the Spirit. And it just felt really good. And that's something that I reflected on for a long time. So I think that's kind of what drew Alana and I together was we were both really strong in the church and we really respected each other's values and what we were preparing for, my mission and her being a wife and mom and active in the church. And I guess this kind of gets into our love story. She moved in 5th grade and
Again, what city is this?
Prosser, Washington.
Okay.
So
And that's near...
Tri-Cities, yeah. So Tri-Cities area. And there's quite a few members in the Tri-Cities area. They built a temple there when, like early 2000s, I think. And I remember that. My parents were really excited.
What are the 3 cities that are part of the Tri-Cities?
It's Kennewick, Pasco, and Richland. And so we were in the Kennewick stake.
Yeah, and then it switched.
And then we switched.
Is Centralia near there? Centralia?
Centralia is a little farther up in Washington, in the center of Washington. So,
Okay.
yeah, so Alana moved into our school in 5th grade. There's only one, there's one elementary school, one middle school, one high school. So
One word.
one word. Yeah. So it was a small town. So she moved in, and I remember, I don't remember if I saw her in primary for the first time or if I saw her in 5th grade for the first time. But both times I noted like, oh man, who's that new girl? Like she's cute and bubbly. And so I remember it was like the first day of 6th grade because she moved in towards the end of 5th grade. And we did a few things, I think, over the summer with our families. Our ward was really good about, we had a lot of close family friends in the ward. My parents were friends with there were several other really big families. And so we would go over for family dinners, and my dad was hunting buddies with this guy, and so we became really close with them. And so there's just a really good ward community. Anyway, going back, so beginning of 6th grade, she really caught my eye, and I just was like infatuated, head over heels, and a lot more gutsier then than I am now. And so I started writing secret admirer notes and sticking them in her locker, and just little like, I love you, and some little praise things, but not giving away who I was. And so that went on for like all of 6th grade and
most of 7th.
And most of 7th grade.
I didn't know who it was.
Yeah. She didn't know who it was for a long time. And I don't know how you felt about that, but
Yeah, well, I ended up figuring out it was him because he was always like looking at me. And I was like, I think it's him. I wrote back, and I'm like, I think I know it's you. Put it in his locker. And, and then, yeah. And
I would like hang back at recess to hold the door. And
he was always holding the door for me. That was a hint.
Yep.
And, and when he was passing the sacrament, he would like, when he was waiting, he was always like looking at me. And I thought he was pretty cute passing the sacrament. But.
Yep. I'd always try to sit where the deacons line up so that I would pass the sacrament to her family.
Yeah.
So then.
So I found out it was him. Didn't like him back at first, but then very soon after, well, he was really quiet.
Yeah,
I hadn't totally noticed him before.
Very introverted, so.
But then I started paying attention. He was always doing the right thing, the right time, like very quiet, very humble about it. He was just always, with his family, holding his little sister on his lap in sacrament meeting. And I just thought like, wow, that is everything I want. And he's not like prideful about it. And so, yeah, it didn't take very long. I thought that I liked him back. And so it began.
We both excelled in school, and so we were in the honors classes and the advanced classes, which there was only one of those classes for different subjects, and so we were always in the same class, and so, that was nice. And so after she decided she liked me, then 8th grade, we weren't 16 yet, and so we had, we stuck to all the, for the strength of youth standards.
Very strict.
Yeah, very strictly. Didn't kiss and didn't hold hands and weren't really seen together in public that much. But we started to develop a relationship in 8th grade, wrote notes back and forth, and we're just praising each other for what we respected. Me being a worthy priesthood holder was a big thing to her, and her doing well in young women's was a big thing for me. And then high school rolled around. I was in sports. She was active in school leadership, and really, she memorized every single person's name in our grade in school. There's 180 people in our grade, I think.
Wow.
So just really outgoing, and I think that kind of pushed me to be more outgoing and helpful and positive too. I got involved in student government because she was, and so. Then we turned 16 and started dating. I guess first we started going to stake dances. When is that? 14?
That was the romantic time.
Yeah, that was finally we could dance with each other and hang out.
But at least a Book of Mormon's distance apart,
it was
right?
like this.
Oh yeah, it was the awkward, stiff arms, sweaty hands. Yeah, classic. And that was a big thing for a whole core group of friends. Before, no one from our ward had gone to stake dances. Our ward didn't really know about them. And then me and my best buddy in junior high and high school just got up the guts and were like, man, there's these stake dances and we've never been. And I was, let's see, I'm about a little less than a year older than her. We're in the same grade. But I turned 14 and him and I went to this first stake dance together and we were just wallflowers. But then, we were super excited for other people to join us. And then it became this core group of our friends that would, we'd carpool and there would be...
I had to set up a carpool because we had 22 kids going
every out of a single
month.
ward.
Yeah.
So we really kind of, just our core group of friends really were really close. And so we would carpool and there'd be 3 or 4 vans of us. And that was a lot of fun. And we started dating and...
Dating,
yeah,
So I turned 16. We went on a date, but you're not supposed to steady date.
Right.
So it was like we went on a date, and then it was like, well, we'd have to go on a date with someone else first, but there's no one else in this small town, and we don't like anyone else. So it was like we didn't really date. We went on like 5 dates total by the time I graduated high school, but we hung out at school.
Like official dates, yeah.
And everybody knew that we liked each other. So it was like, it was this really awkward thing where we weren't supposed to steady date. We weren't going on dates, but it was like.
We hung out every lunch.
And it was, but we were really trying to follow the standards.
Yeah. And
The upside, I think about that a lot. Like when I see students here in high school, because my kids go to Mormon high schools, and there are all these homecoming and Sadie Hawkins or like Girls' Choice or prom or whatever. There's this weird thing in Utah where you can't ask the same person. To a big formal dance.
Yeah.
And it's obvious what they're trying to do is to not have kids become sexually active. So you kind of have to choose carefully if you have a special someone, which dance you invite them to. So on the one hand, I could see how from the church's perspective, that's good because in their mind, that'll keep kids from having sex. On the other hand, I kind of feel weird about that because number one, it makes kids have to ask people to dances that they really don't want to go to with.
Yeah.
But then also like it kind of discourages emotional intimacy. And on the one hand, I can see why the church wouldn't want sexual intimacy. But on the other hand, I think the church would want people to develop emotional intimacy. And so why would they want to stunt that? And so, I'm not criticizing. It's just like, it's a weird thing.
Yeah, it was a really tricky line for us for a long time.
And then we can get into this later, but kind of on that, like then you go on a mission and you're totally isolated and that's frowned upon. Then you get to college and then it's just open door, have at it emotionally. And
But I would have to say we did like a really good job of following the standards for Yeah.
And my parents were a little stricter about it. They kind of went above and beyond, like for the strength of youth. And so they were kind of the ones that were encouraging me to date other people and maybe discouraging from like going to school dances. We went to like 1 or 2 school dances.
Well, we went to all of them.
I didn't, well, not
4.
Just proms, not like the other dances, like homecoming and stuff.
Oh, yeah, we didn't go to those.
And then, there was a lot fewer young women in our ward than young men. And so if I wasn't interested in the 3 or 4 other young women that were my age, then.
Because you can't date non-Mormons, right?
Yeah. Non-Mormons were out of the question, so.
Remember when we were on leadership, we spent a year planning junior prom, and then we left early because the music was vulgar.
Yep.
What was it? What was the music? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Just like rap or something.
But we planned prom and then left early.
And she was student body president, and I was student body vice president. And
Senior year?
Junior year for junior prom, because junior prom is like the big one. Then when you're a senior, you go to the junior, the dance the juniors planned. So, we planned the big
about standards.
Yeah,
we left the thing that we spent hours like raising money for.
Tell us who knows when someone's listening to this how the Strength of the Youth pamphlet will change. But what were the big standards? Just list them out.
Yeah, so.
Don't date till you're 16. Don't study date after that.
No petting.
Meaning?
Groping, whatever.
We have non-members who listen. So.
Okay. Touching each other, clothes on, private parts, passionate kissing, I think it specifically says. No laying down with each other.
Obviously, no sex.
Yeah, obviously no sex.
Did we say our movies? Was that in there?
So those are just the physical intimacy.
And
then
music.
There's
music. With your music, with your modesty.
Modesty is a big one for
what does that mean?
Girls.
Modesty
means wearing a dress to prom that has a sleeve instead of like a tank top or low cut, or wearing shade shirts underneath. Like everything you wear, just in case. I still love those things.
Yeah.
Not?
No, I do.
Oh, you do?
I still am like a very conservative, modest personality.
And then and now it's, as a young man, like you're obviously attracted to girls. And so there's this I respect her because she's this good, strong young woman. But wouldn't it be nice, right? And so, and then moving to Utah for school, it was a weird thing to see these high schoolers.
Was there a porn masturbation emphasis in high school?
So that was big in Strength of Youth and big in young men's and in priesthood session of conference. And so that was really like beat to death and like I was coming up and really strict.
What was said?
Let's see.
Just don't do it.
Yeah, don't do it. And it was started really early in like as soon as you're in deacons and out of primary when they start splitting the young men and young women's on Sundays and you have separate classes, then that's when it starts. And my dad was.
How do they say that in church?
My dad taught you that lesson.
Well,
right?
Later on he was our priest quorum advisor.
Oh, okay.
My dad was our deacon's quorum advisor forever, for like 5 years when this core group was going through. So my dad was really close to the youth and to my friends and really like a counselor and father figure for us. And so he was in there in Sunday school when the first time it came up and they said like, well, don't have sex with yourself. And I was like, what does that mean?
Because they don't want to say the word masturbate, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, what does that even mean?
So they say don't have sex with yourself. That's how they would phrase it.
Yeah. Well, and just that first time. And
did they say
I didn't
self-abuse? Did they ever say that?
No, they didn't say that. And later on, it got a little more explicit. And so, obviously like in the locker room and whatever, like outside of church is where most of my, and outside of church and outside of my family is where most of my sex ed came from. So, and obviously, a lot of young men struggle with that. And I did too, off and on. And so that was a large source of guilt and shame. And
your dad was your bishop. Is that right? No?
When was he?
Because he was called when we were in college.
Okay.
He was a counselor.
So you didn't have to.
Father
So did you have to talk to your bishop?
Oh, okay. So they split the word when we were in high school. He wasn't the first bishop. He was counselor, and then after I got home from my mission, he was called as bishop.
Yeah, because we were in the BYU lesson found.
That's right. Yeah. So I never had my dad as bishop.
Okay. So did you have to talk to your bishop about that kind of stuff?
I mean, I should have, and that's what a lot of the guilt and shame was from, but then I was scared, and I did later on in high school, because, it was, like, very young age, and so, and I was, other than that, like, straight-laced, did everything right, and so that was kind of the one source of, like, man, I'm going to hell, and I'm not good enough, and, like, man, if my parents found out, and that kind of guilt and shame, that comes from beating that to death. Elder Holland's talk in that one priesthood session where he said, buckle up or whatever, I'm going to singe your eyebrows. And then he talks about, he compares it to playing football or whatever. You can't suit up for Satan's team and then come mission time expect to play on the Lord's side. And that was, it was fire and brimstone, and it just had a profound effect on me. But obviously, like, I was trying and repenting and, off and on thing. So
how does that affect a kid profoundly?
Well, we can get into mental health a little bit later, but, depression, anxiety is kind of a family history thing. And we didn't talk about it growing up, and I respect my family's, whatever they don't want shared. But my mom in particular struggled with it, but it wasn't something we really talked about in our family, growing up at least. And I think our family kind of, well, I'm not really sure. I was young, and so I wasn't privy to my parents' that kind of relationship. But at least we were really conservative, I think, and so it was kind of the suck it up and get over it type feeling is what I got. And so I didn't know what depression was. Through junior high and high school, it became a bigger issue later, but I had some like really down periods, and I think that, that's guilt and shame was part of that. Just one factor that obviously, it's a genetic like illness and stuff. So
did you feel like you kind of had to lie at least at some point?
Yeah.
What does that do to kind of put a kid in a situation, and that's every kid I've ever talked to.
Yeah, like what do? Do you tell your bishop and then you don't have a temple recommend? And we're doing youth temple trips every single month, and that's what our core group of friends does, and we're all active and strong. And like, I know that other people struggled with it, and so, but like, am I going to be the only one that doesn't go to the temple with my friends because I don't have a temple recommend? And then it's like
or
the public,
passing the sacrament,
or passing the sacrament. Yeah,
right?
It's a small ward. It's the only ward, and there's like relatively few youths, and so if we had to have Melchizedek priesthood holders sub in to pass the sacrament because sometimes there weren't enough deacons, and so if I'm sitting out and whatever, someone comes and says like, "Hey, can you pass the sacrament today?" Like, if I say no, then that's a big public shaming thing. And everyone notices when my friends, if someone didn't pass the sacrament, we knew, and it was kind of.
And they were talked about negatively.
Yeah. Not amongst my friends, but just in the ward, I'd hear, oh, so-and-so didn't pass the sacrament. Oh, I heard it was this and that. And so, but overall we were like really core, good, strong group.
So is it hard to kind of learn to lie early? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I felt really bad about it, and I didn't really think it was fair sometimes because it was such a hard thing, and we didn't talk about it in a positive way, right? Like sexuality and I think I in particular maybe was more sexually driven than a lot of average young men, so. Like it was a big thing, and like lying wasn't something I was comfortable with, but it was really tough, and that was something that I beat myself up over. Like, well, you weren't brave enough and willing enough to do the right thing, and come clean to the bishop or whatever. And when we'd go to temple, youth temple trips, then you're sitting there thinking, man, am I worthy to be here? I'm not actually worthy to be here, and so. Temple trips and passing the sacrament and stuff, sometimes it would turn into this self beating up session of, I shouldn't be doing this and I'm not good enough. And I wouldn't say that I questioned the gospel a lot, but I was afraid of two things. Maybe I was afraid of it not being true and missing out on, like I was afraid of it not being true and following the standards and sacrificing a lot of things and working hard for the church and everything. And I was afraid, I didn't think I was going to go to the celestial kingdom. Like I just kind of given up on that, I guess. And so that was kind of a sad thing, but I don't know. It's kind of the cognitive dissonance, I think.
It's hard.
At the same, I'm not worthy and stuff, but at the same time, like, well, I'm trying my best and like, what do you do? And like, it's going to work out, whatever. Like, I'll get married and then it'll be better, or I'll go on my mission and it'll be better. And so,
yeah. And just to pause for just 1 second, like what's insidious about this is that the kids that are honest about it get punished.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones who get the shame. And so somehow we're punishing the honest kids. And then the kids who lie about it, well, they're not punished, but then they are taught to lie.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a lose-lose for everybody. And it's super painful and shameful. And for those who care about this issue, Margie, my wife, and I, and Natasha Helfer-Parker recently did an episode called A New Approach to Pornography and Masturbation. It's both on Gift of the Mormon Faith Crisis and on Mormon Stories. But if you or your spouse or your child or whatever are struggling with how to deal with pornography and masturbation, we offer kind of a mental health informed, better approach. So check that out. But this is tough stuff.
Yeah.
And Alana, we always kind of assume this is a male problem. Statistics show that over 90% of men masturbate, but women are over 50%. And I'm not interested in like details for any personal reason. Mark, one of our listeners, writes, I've yet to meet an honest, active Mormon male who didn't struggle with porn growing up. And that's kind of what's ironic is these bishops and stake presidents and, they're all doing it. And yet these kids are being kind of held over a rack. But, is this something that from your experience, either personally or other girls, that that girls struggle with, or
Nope.
no?
It was not part of my experience. It wasn't something that I struggled with.
So it's less common. It's less common with women.
And we didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
So if my best friend was doing it, I had no idea.
Okay.
And they didn't talk about it in young women's.
And we didn't talk about it in young women's because it was kind of assumed no one was doing it.
Yeah, and that was something that I felt was unfair later on when I was more aware of things. Was in priesthood, you're beat to death over it, but then in young women's, it's not mentioned. There's no sexuality lessons and shaming and guilt with respect to that. So.
Yeah. And it's, we're drilling into this, and this is really about BYU. I'll be curious to hear if this all flows into your BYU experience or if not. But
yeah, well, obviously, in high school, we had to get the ecclesiastical endorsement to apply for BYU, and interview with the bishop, interview with the stake presidency. And so, yeah, I mean, it was an issue with that. And I think that was one of the times that I kind of came clean. And the other thing is it's totally bishop subjective.
Right.
Some bishops might
don't worry about it. It's totally fine.
Yeah. Or, try your best.
Others will keep you from going to BYU or keep you from a mission.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you can pass the sacrament, go to the temple, just repent on your own and, try not to do it or whatever. And then others would, you might get publicly shamed. And the other thing was I didn't know those statistics. And so I thought that, well, maybe all my friends aren't. And then I'm just the only one. And yeah.
Because you don't admit it to your buddies.
Yeah.
So that's super hard. Okay. Well, I'm sorry. Thank you for being honest about that.
I haven't really talked about that.
It's pretty much every kid, 90, I'd say 98%.
Yeah.
So boys, not girls.
Yeah.
But girls struggle with it too.
Mm-hmm.
So what else is kind of crucial to both of your stories prior to the BYU experience?
So we'd kind of, not dated through high school, didn't kiss for a long time, and then finally did. And then from there, sparks flew, and it was a volatile, dangerous, walking the line sort of thing. And, I think that people were rightly worried about the risk of having sex and things like that. But I always had a curfew, and we were encouraged to do things with friends. But, if we went out for lunch together, then, making out and
a lot of people
hugging and
didn't
stuff.
trust us.
Yeah.
I'd go babysit for someone in the ward, and she said, well, my mom said you guys aren't going to make it. I was like, thanks. I'm doing everything I can, and she's assuming we're not going to make it. And by the way, we did.
Yeah.
We were chaste all the way through, and we did get married in the temple chaste. And so.
But even that, and well, I'm not asking details, but there's this, I lived it, Margie and I lived it. It's what can you do short of actual intercourse that, still will allow you to be worthy?
Yeah.
So there's kind of that making out as a Mormon teen where you're trying to figure out what you can get away with versus not, what you have to confess about and what you don't. Is that weird? Was that hard?
Yeah.
And that's a BYU too, right?
Well, yeah. And it was a super small town. So.
And every leader will tell you have to confess about something different. So some leaders are like, you kissed passionately for more than, 10 seconds. So you need to go talk to your bishop about that.
Mm-hmm. And so being a small town, this is kind of a funny thing, but we went to lunch, came back, and I drove my dad's truck, and we were making out in the truck or whatever. And my mom just drove by the school, and small town, right, from a doctor's appointment or something like that. And she looked and saw us making out in the truck, and there was hell to pay when I got home. And
that was not okay.
I broke the law of chastity, and I had to go talk to my bishop, actually my stake president. It was during my mission interviews, and it was a big deal. And so, but the standard wasn't the same from her family maybe. And so, it's just really, and my family went above and beyond the strength of youth. And so, which was good. I mean, I broke curfew sometimes, but I knew the expectation, and I think that did, protected us. So
what's hard about all this is that there's probably an argument that kids delaying sexual activity might be good for some kids, right? So that makes this complicated.
Yeah, and maybe that even helped us, actually make it and get married later on. And so just because we couldn't date a lot. So so high school was wrapping up, and I was getting ready for a mission. It was always expected, and I'd always been getting ready for it. But then when the time came, there's this massive hesitation or worry, kind of, man, is this really what I want to do? And, there's whatever, unrepentant things, and 2 years is a long time. Am I going to be good enough? My dad served in the London, England mission and loved his mission, and tried to talk about it. And I remember when I was getting ready, he pulled out his mission things and was trying to share his mission experiences with me. And I wasn't really interested. I just had this aversion to talking about it. And, I wish I had when I got back and had my own experiences, and it was something we could bond over, but it was scary. And so, I started going through it, and kind of not fake it till you make it, but you're just kind of swept along in the current in the church, I think, as a youth sometimes. And the testimony comes after the trial of your faith, sort of thing. So, I started the mission papers process, and
now, were you in the time when you'd go to BYU for a year and then go on the mission?
No. So we were
age change was his wave.
Okay, so you were right there. The age change
affected me.
Thomas S. Monson.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it only affected me.
That?
Yeah, I was actually, it was on a Saturday, so I was actually at a cross country meet. So I didn't hear it. I wasn't listening to conference, which is kind of some of the kids. There's a couple other members on the cross country team, and they had it on their phone listening, and let your light so shine to the rest of the cross country team or whatever. And then I heard the announcement. Word of mouth, and I think Alana called me at the cross country meet, or
were you
later
a junior or senior?
Senior.
Okay. That's intense.
I was taking my SAT test.
Because were you planning on going to BYU?
No. So I was planning on leaving. Yeah, I turned 18. I was going to turn 19 the fall after graduating. Okay. So I would have, 4 months to leave. Oh, okay. And the age change only affected me is that I got to leave after graduation in the summer.
You were older in your grade.
I was one of the oldest in my grade. Got it. But I'd applied and deferred BYU acceptance. And so it was surreal, wow, I thought I had all summer and part of the fall to prepare, and now I can leave in a month or two, and I don't know if I'm ready, and I don't know if I want to do this. And I should mention, one of the most powerful recent spiritual experiences was feeling that kind of apprehension, and coming home from home teaching with my dad one Sunday, and had a really good experience. He said some really powerful things to me when we were just driving. He was talking about just being a good man, and being a good priesthood holder and helping people, and being Christ-like, rescuing the lost sheep kind of thing. I don't remember if it was that day or shortly afterwards, but I came home and I went to my room, and I spent quite a bit of time in my room just reading and things. And so I remembered thinking, I need to ask God if this is what I should do, and get that testimony for myself, because I'm scared. And so I knelt down by my bed and I prayed really hard. My prayers, were out of habit and things up. And so, but this was a really sincere and inquisitive prayer. And I cried while I was praying, and then I laid down on my bed and I picked up my scriptures, and I kind of thought I'm just going to open to something. And, I kind of guided where I was opening to, open to, the later part of the New Testament when the apostles are proselyting or whatever, or the missionary sections of the Book of Mormon. And so I flipped open, and one of the other things was I'd been accepted to a couple universities and got a really large grant to University of Montana, or Montana State. And they weren't going to hold it. And so I was thinking, man, I'm losing a lot of money going on a mission. And
you didn't have enough money for your mission.
Yeah, well, I had saved up.
You were really, really close.
That was the other thing. I didn't spend a penny of the money. I worked every summer, harvesting onions, worked my butt off, and saved up close to the $10,000. Actually, I think I had a little bit over the $10,000 to save up. And I was going to pay for it with all my own money. And my parents encouraged me to save up, and then right before the mission said, we'll pay for half of it or whatever. But yeah, there's a lot of concerns. And so when I prayed, that was part of my worry, should I do this? And the verse that I flipped open to, the first one was when Jesus is calling his apostles and he says, take no thought for your purse or script. Just go with the cloak that's on your back and it'll work out. Because God's aware of the lilies of the field and the sparrow. So how much greater are you, or whatever it says. And that was just huge for me. It was directly answering my prayer, and just this overwhelming, like, I'm going to do it. Like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And from then on, the fears kind of washed away, and it was pretty soon before the mission. I think I hadn't got my call, but my papers were pretty close to being done, and it was huge. And then I just spent the rest of the evening, hours reading about the apostles, and in the Book of Mormon, reading about the later Nephi and Lehi and missionaries, and it was really huge. And that was something that lasted all the way up until my faith crisis later on, that throughout my mission and first years at BYU. So, is there anything else you want to add about high school?
I was going to go on a mission too.
Once the age change?
Yeah, because it changed. And so
Women 19, right?
Yeah. And so I was like, I can do this. And I felt really strongly that I should. And I told him that. And because of that, I was hoping he would delay going for a little bit. We could spend some time after high school. Then we could both go at the same time. And
like both go to BYU for a year?
I guess.
Well,
BYU for a year. And then both go on a mission at the same time. And
kind of. It was, she wasn't planning on going before the age change because I'm a year older than her. And women go at a later age, and so I would be getting back from my mission, and then we were going to get married.
Yeah.
So, and we'd been planning our wedding, all through high school. So when the age changed, it was like, well, man, like now we can overlap, and girls should serve a shorter mission. So
I was hoping he would not go right after high school, but he did. He's like, no, I got an answer, and this is what God wants me to do, and it's going to be okay for us. And so he went.
Yeah, and I don't know if you want to talk about your dad. He had his own faith crisis. You can go into that.
Right. Yeah, my dad was starting to struggle with his faith, and I knew that. And he had me watch a presentation that you gave that was it was like an hour, and understanding why people leave. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty much just like, don't think they're dumb and stupid for doing it. It was really good. So I had some exposure to that. And so I thought, okay, my dad's okay.
So your dad was a Mormon Stories listener?
I don't know if it was Mormon Stories, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah. My senior year. And anyway, so he was saying, he was like,
that's multi-generational Mormon Stories listeners. I like that.
I'm having a hard time, just so you know, if you don't, if Bradley doesn't serve a mission and you guys don't get married in the temple, I'm still going to love you no matter what. That's what he said.
That's nice.
And so I called Bradley and was like, are you sure you want to go on a mission? And I said, are you sure this is true?
And that was,
So you started to wonder.
Well, I was pretty sure I knew, but suddenly my dad didn't know. And I was like, what the heck? You taught me this. And I just checked with Bradley because I was like, you know what? My life with my dad is almost, I'm almost going to move out. I'm planning it with Bradley. Like, what matters is like what page we're on. And I called him and I was like, are you sure it's true?
And we were the closest people in the world. And I remember that phone call. And this was, I still had apprehension, and there was still the fear of what if it's not true, and the guilt and shame sort of thing. And so, internally I maybe hesitated a little bit, but like I knew it was true, and I said yes. And looking back, like in talking to her now, and seeing how big of a deal it was to her.
It was a rush of relief. I was like, yes, like we've got our future still planned out. He's still going on mission. We're still going to the temple. Like, it's going to be good.
And so, but just remembering how I felt as a high schooler, that it was maybe not as sound answer as she took it for. Just because, everyone has doubts and is worries and stuff. So, I think that's it. Till you want to pretty much wraps it up. I got my mission call. My generation of our core friends were the first ones to go out on a mission. The age change was our generation. And was I the first one to get my call? out of
I
our
think
group.
so, maybe, or one of the first, and then it
Lance-
was like bam,
Lance got
bam,
his.
bam, bam. Oh yeah, and we were all going.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Just a
Everyone
flood
was
of
getting. It was
all
so
the-
exciting. We're just, I'm baking brownies for everybody, and I'm
Boys
like,
and girls, right?
oh yeah, it was.
There weren't any girls in our ward.
I'm just
Well,
saying.
one.
A
For
year
us,
later-
for us, it was just
Yeah.
an avalanche of all the youth going on.
There were
missions.
about 3 that went a year later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was big. There was this flood of. I was the first one that turned in my papers from our ward in a long time. And then my friend turned in his. He got his call before I did. And then I got my call, and we all went to everyone's calls. You know, it was a big deal for our friends. And so when I opened my call, that was when you still got them in the mail. Everyone was there, and family came into town, and I guess we Skyped. Anyway, ward members were there, and it was a big ward family thing.
Yeah,
and
everyone was crying.
and I opened it up, and man, I wish I had it here. Said, elder brothers, you are hereby called, and I'd been set apart at this point. Had I? No, you get set apart later on. Yeah, you get your call then. Yeah. Anyway, but did it say elder or Bradley? Anyway, it says, you're hereby called to serve, and the area you'll serve is the Spain Malaga mission. And then it goes on about, the language you'll serve is Spanish, and then there's paragraphs about serving the Lord, and it was a really emotional, just powerful thing, and to have the call, like, this is it, like, I'm called, and the field is white and ready to harvest. And so once I got the call, it was like full steam ahead, and my mission president had a mission blog, and so we got on and we're reading the mission blog and looking up things about Spain, and we were really excited. And I had studied Spanish in junior high and high school, and so I was, proficient. I could say sentences and understand quite a bit, and I didn't take AP Spanish, but I could communicate pretty well, and so, so then I went to the Madrid MTC. So I had to fly down. It was to the Provo MTC like a month before to get my visa. I think there's a Spanish ambassador or whatever who came to do a big batch of visas. And that was the first time I met everyone who got their call to the Spain Malaga mission. There were 3 Spain missions at the time. And so, I met some of my companions there for the first time, and it was kind of a dry run for going to the MTC. I flew out and I had to stay a couple days here, and then, ate lunch in the MTC with the missionaries, and it was a cool experience. And then I went back and had like a month or whatever to leave. Went to the Madrid MTC.
I just have to say, Bradley leaving was the hardest day of my life, probably. I was so proud, but it was I felt like I was giving the other half of my soul and my love. And we'd grown up together. He was like my other half, and it was really hard to let him go, but I was so proud of him, and I just knew that was the right thing. And it was a really, really deep love.
Yeah.
I was so proud of him.
And part of the, discouragement from dating is that it's a distraction for young men from going on a mission. And so that was kind of, she wasn't supposed to be at the airport when I left because it's emotional distraction. And so she wasn't, to my knowledge, but her and her mom had driven to outside the airport and watched the plane take
We
off.
watched the plane take off.
So I flew out to Spain with a huge group of missionaries.
It was the biggest group they'd ever got.
The biggest group that Spain MTC had ever got.
Because there's this huge swell of
This massive swell.
of missionaries.
We were the biggest group to ever go through, I think, because the groups after us were smaller. We were people graduated from high school, and it was like the first batch of missionaries leaving, or second batch of age change. And so the Spain MTC had been having like 20, 30 missionaries, and it's on the temple compound. And so there's, the distribution center on the first floor, the classrooms on the second floor, and then the dorms on the third floor. And it's a small MTC. They only had like 20, 30 missionaries there at a time from all over Europe. And we got there, and there was over 100 eventually. And so the church was renting hotels and putting us up. Like I was on the living in the one of the dorm rooms, and but it was a great experience. Everyone was just new and like deer in the headlights. We had a senior couple missionaries that were working the MTC who were in the Tabernacle Choir, and every Sunday we would, the whole MTC would go out and stand on the steps from the temple compound out onto a busy Madrid street, and we would sing medleys of, the Army of Helaman and things like that. And I remember it's just this powerful spirit. We felt like God's army, and people treated us like that, the MTC president. And it was like, wow, this is a massive group, and you guys are going to change the world, the mission, and you're called to do this. And it was huge. On Saturdays, we would leave the MTC and go proselyte there's a huge central park in Madrid, and we would go out and contact people in the MTC, which was like awesome experience, like real people. We're like, oh, it's going to be fake and whatever, but like it was real, and there was a lot of experiences that it was great. And then those people we contacted would be references for the Madrid missionaries. And I tried really hard and had really good contacts. People in the MTC were like, wow, Elder Butter's like, he gets more contacts than a lot of people. We'd partner up with a different elder every Saturday, and I was doing a good job. I was really proud of what I was doing, and I spoke a lot better Spanish than most of the other people. And so there were some really touching experiences that I had. So Spain is, there's kind of this dichotomy of beliefs. There's a dictatorship, Franco, up until it's like 1975, I think, and it was a far-right Catholic dictatorship. And so the older generation was raised super, super staunch Catholics, like nationally so. It was a national religion, still is, I think, officially. And then in the 90s, I guess, Spain, the younger generation kind of swung the other way and joined the rest of Europe. And so the younger generation is atheist and not interested in religion, clashes with the older generation. And then Spain in particular, with being on the Mediterranean coast, which I served in Malaga, which is the southern third of Spain. So we had the Spanish Riviera. Lots of parties, lots of discotecas, lots of college students. And anyway, so in this park, I remember contacting my first experience with an atheist, and it was this older guy actually. And he talked about the suffering in the world, and he talked about, I think he'd lost his wife to cancer and had hard financial times. And I was just speechless. I had these canned answers and preached my gospel textbook things, and it didn't, I had nothing to say. And so I went back to the MTC thinking about that, and we would go to the Madrid temple once a week while we were in the MTC. And I remember praying in the temple because my life had been, perfect up until then. I hadn't really experienced any suffering. No family members had died. And I felt like I couldn't relate. And so I prayed and I said, please, God, give me some sympathy. And I remember asking for a trial, asking for, and the temple ceremony was, I'd gone to the temple, I'd been endowed in high school, and I guess shortly after graduation, and I'd gone over the summer several times. We had a temple nearby. And we went to the temple on P days in the MTC, and emailing my family later on that day, I found out that my grandma had cancer, pretty advanced. And it was this massive, be careful what you wish for. I'd wish for this trial, and so I remember crying and, wow, I'm leaving on my mission and I don't know if I'll see my grandma again. And, she'd been less active and never been, we're not sealed. And so I was worried about that. And, but it was this massive, wow, God answered my prayer, and this is a trial of my faith, and it's going to help me. And, she had surgeries and got better. But it was really scary. Then I went out on the mission field, and I loved my mission president. He was, and still do, he was one of the most Christ-like people I'd ever met, and his wife. And we were the biggest group to hit the mission. We took a train down from Madrid, and My trainer was amazing. I just really looked up to him. He was the hardest working missionary in the mission, hands down. He was legendary. Like everyone was like, Elder Ilson is una máquina. And exact obedience was really huge. There weren't a lot of, I didn't think there were a lot of Jack missionaries, that disobeyed rules. My trainer later went on to be AP and was just this legend, It's hard to baptize in Europe. It's hard to baptize Spaniards. So most of our baptisms were South American immigrants. We were the
South American or South African?
South American.
Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of Bolivian, Peruvian, Ecuadorian immigrants that would come over because the euro was stronger than anyway. And so I don't know, the average baptisms for a missionary in Spain, but we were the second most baptizing mission in all of Europe. And I think particularly for that reason, because there was a lot of South American immigrants that were more open to proselyting. And so I think missionaries maybe on their mission would, baptize, I don't know, maybe 5 was, I don't really remember a lot, but I think like 5 was a lot, or 6 or whatever. Yeah. And my trainer was baptizing like 20 people in each area, and just made me the missionary that I was. Let's see. And one thing he told me was, we were talking about how disappointed I was with some of the missionaries that were in my dorm in the MTC and some of the missionaries that were in our district. Once I saw that there were missionaries that don't obey the rules and that like don't work hard. And he told me, be the kind of missionary that you thought missionaries were before you were a missionary. Because the missionaries, in wards are just looked up to and respected and really well taken care of. Less so in Spain, at least. They're honored in that way, but there's just fewer members, and so we didn't have a lot of member meals and things like that, and it's harder to work with them to take people with you. And so planning was huge, goal setting was huge. We were driven by numbers and really worked hard to reach those, maybe to a fault sometimes, but it was always to reach more people and to be more effective and to plan more effectively. We were preach my gospel missionaries. And, my trainer did a really good job at going through the first 6 weeks program or whatever. And we did language study perfectly. And we were, I can't think of anything we did wrong. We were always on time for everything. Pretty much the only time we wouldn't be on time was we would teach so many lessons. We would have lessons going late. And the Spanish schedule's different. You can stay out later because we have mediodía, so you go up back during lunchtime. And we would have to sprint home because we were teaching lessons and try to make it on time. And we were frequently late getting home. But to us, it was worth it, and God was blessing us with all these lessons. We opened a new area. My first experience in the mission was opening a new area. And, we didn't really have a great area book, and there weren't like members. And so it was awesome. And we baptized in this new area. It had been part of a sister's area, but it was hard for them to get to. And so they passed a couple investigators to us, but we tore it up. It was awesome. And we worked super hard. We would we'd skip meals. We would literally run. We'd use personal money. So you get your, whatever it was, 200 or 400 euros. I don't remember what it was. It was quite a bit. And we would use personal money for travel and then not reimburse it because it was hard to collect receipts and send them in. And so it was just a personal sacrifice, and it was above and beyond what a lot of people did.
What were some of the, just for the sake of time, like what were the parts of your mission that you think were kind of most essential to the stories that leads into BYU?
Yeah. There was, so in that first area, we were knocked on an evangelist pastor's door, looking for less active. And he's like, "Oh yeah, elders, I know who you're talking about, whatever, come on in." And then he wrecked us with the New Testament. And it was all about authority to preach, about the apostasy, and he was speaking in tongues, and it got really weird. And I felt like the presence of Satan was in the room, but he totally owned us with the scriptures, with, you know, Bible bashing. We weren't bashing, and my trainer was frustrated, so we just kind of walked out. And I went back and I read the New Testament. I read the New Testament probably 3 or 4 times on my mission, and that was something I was known for. Was, you know, I knew how to. I was like a lawyer or an attorney, and so. And I was pretty proud of that. And I'm a little bit of an aggressive, you know, driven person. And so I'd get sucked into Bible bashing sometimes. But I knew the church was true. Logically, like A plus B plus C, given all these scriptures, like the apostasy, the restoration, it was true, indisputably. And I was really effective at communicating that. And people would, wow, I didn't know the New Testament was, you know, that's the way the church was set up. And like, yeah, there has to be a continuous priesthood line, things like that. And so I could throw it down with, you know, Catholic priests, evangelical pastors, Jehovah's Witnesses would always snag us on the road. And if you're not a Catholic sect in Spain, you have to be really scrappy. And so, yeah, I had a very, very strong testimony of the restoration and the scriptures. Had some hard experiences, companion pull a knife on me, and just really abusive companionship for a while. Tried to get emergency transferred, and it couldn't happen. We were just isolated, you know, hours away from anyone else. And there was a whole year that I didn't baptize. We baptized in my first area, and then I was working really hard, being perfectly obedient. Went a year without baptisms, and then finally it broke. And I was sent to a lot of the hardest areas: whitewashing, opening new areas, training, areas that hadn't baptized in years that were on the verge of being closed down. I didn't like be zone leader or anything like that, but I knew that President trusted me to like get the job done and work hard. And then on my mission, sometimes I would feel just woefully like unworthy. And looking back, it was severe depression. But my companion would go to bed and I would stay up praying and just sobbing for repentance or for forgiveness, and just this dark pit of despair. And sometimes it would get so deep that I would feel this like kind of light thinking about the atonement. And so that was a big testimony to me of the atonement. A lot of dysfunctional branches, working with church leadership. And in my patriarchal blessing, it said, learn the workings. I don't remember exactly wording, but learn the workings and administration of the church, because it'll come to serve you later on. So I thought, like, I'm going to be a bishop or like a stake leadership later on. Like, you know, that's who I am. I work hard and I love the church. And so, I played a big hand in some of these small struggling branches. And then towards the end of my mission, Alana waited for me for like a year and a half. You can talk about that maybe.
Yeah, what was life like for you?
Yeah, after graduation.
Alana, while he's on his mission, what are you doing?
So I went to BYU.
Provo. Okay, so let's talk about
the reason why I chose it was because that's where he was going, but it was also where my parents had gone, and it's very affordable and had all the programs I wanted. So.
And were you excited to go to BYU?
Yep.
Was the ecclesiastical endorsement an issue for you?
Nope.
And what were your visions of BYU? Like, what was it going to be like?
I think I don't know.
I guess you weren't excited. Like, I was excited to date, but you wouldn't have been excited to date.
No, I was really worried that I was going to get a lot of pressure to date.
Yeah.
And I was like getting ready to, you know.
And you should be able to, your freshman year, like date up a storm and all these Mormon boys and new experiences.
There was a ton of pressure from the YSA ward to do that.
Were you not in a dorm at BYU your freshman year? Why not?
Because the dorms were too full. Because they were using dorm rooms for MTC missionaries.
Oh,
with the exchange, it was a huge surge.
So they were using freshman dorms for missionaries. So yeah, there were no dorms available.
Oh, you were deprived of the BYU dorm experience.
I wouldn't say deprived.
Hey, as someone who was in a BYU dorm, Chipman Hall, honors dorm, I'm pointing to the camera.
Yeah.
We had a great time. But anyway, you didn't get that. Okay.
Yeah. But I had awesome roommates. I mean, we like all about Disney princesses and Nacho Libre, and conference comes and we build a fort and we're eating popcorn watching conference. Like, so fun.
Yeah. So that's that. Now we're getting into the real deal at BYU.
Yes. It was so fun. And I
think that was kind of hard for me to hear. She wrote me really well, because here I am like busting my butt and like giving everything, and then it's just a party and like, I don't know, like I felt like there was maturity that I got in the gospel on the mission that maybe was lacked by students,
You're like all those immature BYU students.
Yeah. Anyway, so
And you're really just jealous and envious.
yeah, it was it was actually jealousy.
So tell us about just what you loved about your time at BYU as that freshman year. Like, what are some of the things you loved?
Yeah, so I loved going to devotional on Tuesdays with my best friend.
Do you remember any speakers that you loved? You don't have
The
to.
young women's.
Oh yeah, I met Elena Dalton at it was a dance devotional, and I hugged her and cried. She was my hero.
Okay.
Elder Holland.
Yeah.
I
GAs
mean,
would
so if
come
there
and
was
speak,
anything
right?
with an apostle, I was like there.
And there's that buzz
Elder
of like, an
Holland
apostle's
brushed
coming
my arm
to.
once.
He brushed your arm.
Yeah, you were volunteering.
I was holding the door we can talk about this later, but yeah, I saw him and
You went to a thing with Elder Oaks. That was a big.
yeah, well, that was later too. But studied elementary education, loved
Why?
that because I love children. It's notorious for being the major that LDS girls choose when they don't know what to do. But like, I knew that that's actually what I wanted to do. Like, it legit is what I wanted to do.
But not full time as a career, right?
Not while my kids are little. No, I have
Right.
we have a little boy right now and another one on the way. So when they get back like into kindergarten, maybe I'll go back. Right now I'm teaching dance part-time. But yeah, minored in dance. I loved how kind all the professors were. I was really shocked how kind. I remember my first Thanksgiving, several professors invited students, had this open invitation that anyone that didn't have a place to go for Thanksgiving could go to their home. And I thought that was really nice. All the boys would get the doors for all the girls. And I thought, oh, like they're just trying to get me to like them. But then like, no, they're getting it for old ladies. They're getting it for pregnant ladies. They're getting it for moms. Like there was this really nice culture.
Chivalry's not dead.
Yeah, I felt that was very alive and well. And I had several professors that were just so kind to me. I had this one professor, she was a dance professor, and she canceled class once and brought loaves of baked bread. And she's like, Jesus broke bread with his apostles, so I'm going to break bread with you, and we're just going to talk, and I'm just going to love you today. And I was like, oh my gosh, only at BYU, And maybe that's not only at BYU, but I think we have to give credit to the fact that lots of people are really inspired by the faith to do really, really beautiful things. I loved my time at BYU there. And then I heard about this opportunity to do an internship in Romania. And I knew that I had to do it before I was going to go on my mission. And so it was a last minute thing. I signed up and I went, and it was like volunteering in orphanages. And this was like my dream. I'd always wanted to do it. So I went and did that. And before I went, I got all my mission papers ready to go. And I had my wisdom teeth taken out. So I was just ready to like push the button and go. And went to Romania, had a beautiful, beautiful experience there. I consider those my first babies. I just absolutely loved. We'd go and play with them and teach them how to walk and visit them in the hospital because they get sick all the time. They don't have parents there. And
she wrote me, and that was kind of her first exposure to like real suffering and real hardship, because birth control was banned under the Soviet Union, like dictatorship that was there.
Was, yeah.
Yeah, it was. And so
they have
there's
big
this
orphan
just
problem.
massive dysfunctional, orphan problem, and gypsies and babies dying in the orphanage.
Yeah, so I went and had a really good time, but that was when I started having a really hard time, like reconciling my faith. Do you want me to start talking about that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I was in Romania, ready to push the button, ready to go on a mission. I was reading Preach My Gospel in Romanian, reading the Book of Mormon in Romanian,
Wow.
ready to go. And I had a really hard time with a few things. One of the things was suffering, like, how would God, how would he do this to his babies? Like, I love them. And how... And I kind of thought well, I'm his hands, so he is taking care of them because I'm taking care of them. But it was like, how? And it was really confusing because in Alma, there's a scripture that says, that same spirit which inhabits this, which doth possess your body at the time that you go out of this life, that same spirit will possess your body in that eternal world. So I was like, whatever happens to you in this life, it goes with you. So I'm like, these babies, like, they're having severe attachment disorder. They don't have the ability to feel or perceive love. Like, really bad things are happening. How could God want to send that into the next life with these babies? And like, how could he not plan for that? And sometimes it's like, oh, well, they have handicaps because they were so righteous in the pre-existence. But I was like, well, I was righteous in the pre-existence too, and that's why I got a good family. It's like, why do they get no family? I had a really hard time trying to think about that. And then also, like, looking at gypsy families, the parents you could see them in the street coaching their kids how to steal. And I'm like, why would God do that? Like, send kids down to earth and have their parents teaching them to steal. Like, how does that get reconciled? Like, are they supposed to not steal or listen to their parents? So that was really hard. And then, like, another thing that was really hard was looking at the members in Romania and seeing, like, all of the joy that I got from the gospel is because I had my family, and, like, I knew it was true, but also, like, I had tons of fruits in my life, but I just didn't see any fruits in the Romanians' lives. Like, no one came with their family. They were all single because their family were Romanian Orthodox. And I was like, how could I get ready to go on a mission and tell these people that they need to come to this church when, like, I've been to the Romanian Orthodox churches too. That was part of the experience. And, like, everyone there seems, like, happier because they're, like, with their families. So, like, how could I do that? And then the missionaries were really jealous of what we were doing because no one was letting them in. But, like, we were actually, like, being able to serve and, like, do something kind of productive. They're like, oh, I just wish we could go to the orphanage, or I wish we could go to the hospital. And so, long story short, I was like, I started feeling really uneasy about going on a mission. And I didn't, like, push the go button when the date came that I was going to be old enough.
Because you were kind of doubting your testimony a little bit?
Because I was kind of doubting. I wasn't saying I was doubting my testimony, but I was doubting that, like, it worked for everybody else.
And
Like, the gospel works for me, but it doesn't seem like it's working for the orphans or the gypsies or the... I was just, like, kind of separating myself from everyone else and being like, it works for me, but I'm not so sure that I want to impose that on other people.
Yeah. And just to kind of... I think I understand that, like, gypsy isn't a great term these days to use. Is that true?
Well,
but
yeah,
I mean, you're referring to them how you refer to them at the time. So.
Yeah, and I mean,
I'm just like to be sensitive to that.
Thank you.
Politically
Thanks,
correct.
John.
Yeah,
indigenous people, like, I don't even know.
Well,
nomadic.
no,
I mean, what an alternative phrase
we
is,
had
so.
a lot of gypsies in Spain, and the Spaniards were really racist towards them, and they were just isolationist. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I don't know. They called them Roma because they came from, like, Romania, whatever. But
Romanians don't want them to be called Roma because
ethnically
they're
different. They're darker skinned, and anyway, yeah, it's not super. But
it's sensitive.